You know, I've been thinking about you lately. Yeah, you. The one grinding through another week in that red state town where the bills keep stacking up faster than the summer heat. You're not some suit in D.C. chasing headlines. You're the real deal. The neighbor who's got the scars from real work and the smarts to see through the noise. And here's the kicker. Sticking with this show means you're already ahead of the curve. If you're listening to me, that is. Because today we're ripping the lid off something that's got folks like you, hardworking, Republican, MAGA diehards, if there's any out there listening, paying the price for policies sold as wins. We're talking about healthcare hikes, farm bailouts that don't bail out, and tax tricks that fatten the fat cats while your grocery bill just stings more. Trust me, by the end, you'll have the ammo to call it like it is at your next cookout. So hang tight. Hey there, neighbors. Welcome back to Your Neighbor on the Left, the podcast where we talk about liberal politics, human decency, and life on the blue side of America's ideological divide. My name is Don Spielis, your host. Today we're diving into MAGA self-sabotage, how Trump's plays are hitting your pocket hard. 8 months into round two, and the bills are stacking up, not just in Washington, but in places like yours, from the soybean fields of Iowa to the auto plants in Ohio to the local Walmart. I'm not here to dunk on your dreams. I'm here just to lay out the facts on how these moves, from the first term flops to the fresh cuts and that Project 2025 roadmap, are landing square on the laps of the very folks who cheered him the loudest. We'll walk through it step by step with real numbers and stories from the heartland so you can see it clear as day. Grab that coffee. I've got some facts to unpack, and I promise it'll arm you better than any rally chant. But first, let's do some hot topics. Listen, if you're the kind of neighbor who spots the BS from a mile off, the one who's paid enough taxes to know when Washington's playing games with your paycheck, then this segment's got your name on it. We're talking about the shutdown that's got parks closed and paychecks stalled, but not for the reasons they're yelling about. False flags on immigrant health care, propaganda blasting from your own government sites, and a sneaky push for some deep cuts that hit everybody but the big shots. By the time we're done, you'll see right through the smoke. And yeah, you'll want to share it over the back fence. Stick around. This is straight talk. Day 6, at least when I'm recording, it's day 6, of this government shutdown, locked in since last Tuesday. And it's already messing with national parks and food inspections and who knows what else down the line. But today, in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to zero in on the spin, those wild claims from the Trump crew that Democrats are hell-bent on handing free healthcare to millions of undocumented folks, how that's getting shoved down our throats via official channels that might just break the rules, and a quick peek at why this shutdown feels like more than a budget spat. It's aimed at everyday you, the worker, the parent, the retiree. So let's unpack it, simple and square, no jargon, just some facts. All right, let's start with the big lie that's lighting up the airwaves and Trump's Truth Social feed. Democrats want to blow billions on free healthcare for illegals, and that's why the government's dark. Trump himself hammered it home this week, saying Dems are demanding $1.5 trillion, yes, trillion, to cover undocumented immigrants, or else they'll tank the whole deal. The White House even dropped a, quote, fact sheet, blasting it as Democrats shutting down over free healthcare for illegals, pegging the cost at nearly $200 billion. GOP leaders are echoing it everywhere. Fox loops, rally chants, you name it. Painting this as some radical giveaway that's starving American families. But here's the rub. It's flat out false. Democrats aren't pushing a dime for healthcare on undocumented immigrants. What they're after in these talks is protecting stuff like the Affordable Care Act subsidies that keep premiums down for working folks, you and me, and shoring up Medicaid so it doesn't get gutted further for citizens who need it. Undocumented people, they're not eligible for Obamacare marketplaces or federal Medicaid or Medicare. That's been the law all along. The only coverage they get is emergency room basics under a rule called the EMTALA, which says hospitals can't turn away folks in crisis no matter who they are. And that covers citizens too, or we all be up a creek. I mean, if you get wheeled into the emergency room on a gurney, how are you checking for insurance and citizenship? Fact checkers from CNN to the AP are calling it a straight-up mislead, with no bill language backing the claim. It's the same old playbook. Scare up the base with immigrant boogeymen, while the real fight's over keeping your doc visits affordable. If you're a small business owner watching premiums spike or a mom juggling copays, this lie's not just wrong. It's a distraction from the healthcare squeeze that's already real. Now, pivot with me here, because it's not enough to say it on TV. They're plastering this junk right on government turf, the stuff we all pay for. Picture firing up the Housing and Urban Development website or the Labor Department's page for job tips, and bam, banners on the front page screaming, "Blame radical Democrats for the shutdown," or "Senate Democrats and the radical left want your money for illegals." Out-of-office emails from furloughed feds, same vibe. This mess is on the radical Dems holding up funding. It's across a dozen agencies, from Interior to Agriculture, all synced up like a bad choir, courtesy of memos from the White House's budget office telling them to toe the line. Taxpayer dollars funding partisan politics. That's not service, that's a billboard for midterms. And get this, it smells like a straight violation of the Hatch Act, that old rule from 1939 that keeps federal workers from playing politics on the clock. No using official gear, as in websites, emails, phones, the works, to bash parties or sway votes. Ethics watchdogs and Dems like Jamie Raskin are filing complaints left and right, with groups like Public Citizen already lodging formal ones against HUD and others for those exact banners. Legal folks say it's textbook. This ain't neutral. Here's why we're closed. It's finger pointing with a partisan edge, eroding that line between government and campaign. We've seen OSC, the oversight crew, nail folks for less. Like rally plugs on Fed time. If you're a civil servant stuck sending those emails, or just a taxpayer footing the bill, it's a gut punch. Breaks the trust we count on when things go sideways. Phew, but why drag this out, you ask? Well, whispers from the Hill say Trump's got an angle, using the chaos to ram through bits of that Project 2025 wish list, deep slashes to agencies, firing sprees for, quote, disloyal staff, end quote, and rerouting cash away from blue state projects. His budget guy, Russ Vogt, the big Project 2025 architect, is grinning ear to ear about wielding the shutdown axe. It's not just a standoff. It's a lever for the long game. we'll dig deeper into that in a bit, but for now, no, it's less about budgets and more about remaking the rules in their image. So that's the shutdown stripped bare. Lies to rile, propaganda to push, and a hidden shove towards bigger changes. Okay, so let's get back to that Project 2025 stuff. If you've been following the headlines or dodging the shutdown headaches at your local park, you've probably caught wind of something wild. Donald Trump, the guy who spent all of last year swearing up and down that Project 2025 was some stranger's fever dream and he had barely glanced at it, is now out here name-dropping it like it's his favorite new toy. Yes, you heard that right. After months of I know nothing, during the campaign trail, he's suddenly all in, posting about it on Truth Social, chatting up its architects in the Oval Office, and waving it around like a blueprint for his big plans. So today I want to talk a little bit about pulling back the curtain on this flip-flop. What he said then, what he's blasting now, and why it should matter to folks like you who just want the government to work without the drama. Just some facts from his own words and the folks watching close. So let's rewind a bit first because context is everything. Back in the heat of 2024, when the ads were flying and the debates were firing up, Trump couldn't distance himself fast enough from Project 2025. Remember those clips? He'd stand there at rallies all bluster and go, I have no idea who's behind it, or it's not my agenda. They just use my name to sell books. His campaign even put out statements disavowing big chunks of it, like the parts on firing federal workers or overhauling civil service, calling it abhorrent or extreme. It was a full court press. Truth Social rants, Fox News interviews, the works, all to paint it as some rogue Heritage Foundation thing cooked up by outsiders, not the guy with his name on the door. Polls were tight, swing states were in play, and the last thing he needed was Democrats lobbing this 900-page conservative wish list at him like a political grenade. And it worked, sort of. Enough voters bought the whole nothing to do with me line to get him back into the White House. But fast forward now, 8 months into term 2, and oh boy, has the tune changed. It's like he woke up one day and decided the mask was off. Big tell? That Truth Social post from Thursday, October 2nd, just a few days ago, as we're recording this, Trump fires off, I have a meeting today with Russ Vought, he of Project 2025 fame, to determine which of the many Democrat agencies, most of which are complete and total disaster, a total waste of money, I should start cutting from. We will save trillions of dollars. A lot of these agencies were put in place just to get things done that should have been done privately. I look forward to telling you which agencies they will be. Russ is fantastic. End quote. All caps in on the savings, exclamation points everywhere. It's pure vintage Trump, but with Project 2025 slapped right in the middle like a badge of honor. No more winking from the sidelines. He's owning it. Touting Vought, the guy who literally co-wrote chunks of the thing, as his go-to hatchet man. Now, if you're saying, whoa, hold up, who's Russell Vought? Fair question, if you're not glued to C-SPAN reruns. Vought is a hardcore conservative operative. Trump's old budget director from his first term, and yeah, one of the masterminds behind Project 2025. He penned whole sections on slashing federal spending, firing disloyal bureaucrats, and remaking agencies to fit a super presidential mold. Think less oversight, more loyalty to the boss in the Oval. During the campaign, Trump wouldn't touch Vought with the 10-foot pole, at least in public. Now, he's got him parked at the Office of Management and Budget again, and they're huddling up like old war buddies. That October 2nd meeting, It wasn't some sidebar chat. Reports say they spent hours mapping out which, quote, deep state targets to hit first, all under the shutdown's cover. Trump even teased it on social media the night before, posting about getting rid of radical left agencies that are destroying our country, and tagging it straight to Project 2025's playbook. It's not subtle. It's a full embrace, and he's pushing it hard as the secret sauce for draining the swamp all over again. And it's not just about that one post. Trump's been on a tear lately, layering in Project 2025 shoutouts like their rally applause lines. Take his interview on Fox last week, the one where he was griping about the shutdown talks. He didn't just blame Democrats. He pivoted right to, quote, we're implementing a lot of good ideas from that project. The ones about efficiency, cutting waste. Russ and the team are making it happen, end quote. No denial. No, I didn't read it. Just straight up credit. Then, over the weekend, another Truth Social barrage, a thread ripping the EPA and education departments as woke disasters, word for word echoing of Project 2025's call to gut their budgets and staff. He even quoted a line from the document's executive summary, something about restoring family values by defunding radical gender programs in schools. Folks, if you squint, it's like he's reading from the index and loving every page. And this isn't just randomly happening. It's ramping up with the shutdown chaos. Trump's using the impasse, parks closed, feds furloughed, as his excuse to float these cuts, and Project 2025 is the roadmap he's flashing. In that vote meeting, they reportedly zeroed in on three big ones: the Department of Education, bye-bye federal funding for public schools, and hello vouchers; chunks of the EPA, less clean air rules, more drilling permits; and HHS bits tied to gender ideology in healthcare. He posted about it Friday. Quote, with Russ's help from the project, we're identifying the Democrat strongholds in government. Time to save money for the real Americans. It's got that us versus them vibe cranked up to 11, and the real Americans line straight out of the project's intro, where it talks about prioritizing traditional values over elitist ones. Critics are piling on. Even some GOP lawmakers are whispering frustration like, why invoke the thing we buried last year? But Trump, he's all gas and no brakes, as usual. Now let's talk about why this matters beyond the tweets, because it's not just words, it's actions. During the campaign, that denial let him thread the needle, woo the MAGA base with tough talk on government bloat without scaring off moderates who heard Project 2025 and thought, firing 50,000 civil servants, raising the retirement age, that sounds like my job or my Social Security is on the line. But now, with the keys to the kingdom and a shutdown as cover, the gloves are off. He's not just touting it, he's weaponizing it. Take the vote powwow. Sources say they greenlit memos for Schedule F revivals. That's the plan to strip job protections from tens of thousands of federal workers, making it easier to purge anyone who's not singing Hail to the Chief. Trump's hyped it on socials twice this week. Project 2025 gets us back to small government, no more deep state spies. And the base is eating it up, with replies flooding in like, finally, Daddy. But here's the neighbor-to-neighbor truth. This shift isn't free. For everyday folks, the veteran waiting on VA claims, the farmer eyeing EPA loans, the teacher in a rural school, these cuts could mean longer lines, less help, higher costs. Project 2025 isn't some abstract think tank fluff. It's a hit list. And Trump's gone from passing acquaintance to It's My Bible in record time. Even shortly after the election, we heard nothing about any of this. But now, here we are in October, and it's full-on love letters, retweeting Heritage Foundation clips. It's like the campaign was a rehearsal, and now it's opening night. And as for vote, he's the through line. Back in 24, Trump name-checked him once, vaguely, as a budget guy. Now, Fantastic Russ, Project 2025 fame. He's fawning all over him. They met again Monday, according to leaks, hashing out more agency targets, with Trump posting a photo of them at the Resolute desk with the caption, "Working on the project to make America efficient again." It's not one meeting. Now it's a series. A strategy session series, turning denial into delivery. Now look, I get it. Politics is a contact sport, and flip-flops happen all the time. But this is a steroid-infused 180. From I disagree strongly to this is us. Democrats, of course, are crowing, calling it the albatross Trump hung on himself. And even outlets like The Hill are headlining Trump lies about Project 2025. Fact checkers are swamped, telling how many of his first-term moves already mirrored the project, from tariff tweaks to union rollbacks, despite the nothing to do with it song and dance. If you're a swing voter who bought the denial, or a Republican wondering why the small government talk feels like a sledgehammer, this is your wake-up. So, to sum up, Trump's recent riffs on Project 2025 aren't slips. They're signals. From that bombshell Truth Social drop about vote to the shutdown field post pushing cuts to the weird version of Don't Fear the Reaper done by AI that has J.D. Vance playing the drums and Trump playing the cowbell and vote as the Reaper. He's not just acquainted anymore. He's all in, steering the ship straight into its waters. After months of campaign smoke, the fire's lit, and it's burning hot. So, continuing on the shutdown theme, and we're a week into this mess, the frustration's boiling over like, a pot left too long on the stove. We're talking real outcry from coast to coast. Folks aren't just grumbling in the comments, they're signing petitions and firing off letters and straight up demanding that Congress should feel the pinch right alongside the rest of us. That petition on change.org, over 94,000 signatures in just a few days, calling to strip lawmakers' pay until the lights come back on in D.C. And it's bipartisan fire. Republicans like Representative Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania posting on Facebook to hold his own paycheck. Democrats like Representative Eugene Vindman pushing bills to dock everyone's salary, and even independents yelling no budget, no pay from the rooftops. On social media, it's trending hard, posts racking up thousands of likes, from the Taxpayers Protection Alliance blasting no urgency, no accountability, to everyday vets saying it, if the military's suiting up without a dime, why's Congress cashing paychecks? And let's zero in on that, because it hits the gut. While parks are padlocked and IRS refunds stall and hundreds of thousands of federal workers are furloughed, staring at empty bank accounts, but the essential folks, the ones who can't clock out, they're the heroes grinding through air traffic controllers, guiding planes, TSA screening lines, and yes, our military, active duty troops, reservists on deployment, civilian Pentagon staff, all reporting for duty, saluting the flag, protecting bases overseas, and not getting paid. It's not new. It happened in 2019 as well, when 800,000 feds went unpaid. But it never gets less infuriating. These are the neighbors with kids and braces and mortgages due and groceries to buy. Not some abstract government employee, but the sergeant from Ohio or the analyst in Virginia who's got your back while lawmakers bicker over headlines. Representative Gil Cisneros, a Navy veteran himself, nailed it on X. Quote, service members and essential employees are working without pay to keep our country running, while members of Congress continue to be paid. It's unjust, end quote. Spot on, Gil. If they're out there holding the line on $0, why is the crew in the Capitol, the ones who flipped the switch on this shutdown, still pulling in $174,000 a year plus whatever perks? House Resolution 1973, the No Pay for Congress During Default or Shutdown Act, is gaining steam in the House, with co-sponsors from both sides saying it's time to play by the same rules. But escrow clauses? Nah, that's a dodge. Hold it in a drawer and hand it back later. Make it stick, or it's just more DC theater. This isn't some flash-in-the-pan complaint, though. It's waking folks up to the bigger rot. We're not just mad about one shutdown. We're fed up with Congress as a whole that's been broken for decades, turning governance into a game of gotcha while the rest of us foot the bill. So let's dream bigger here. What if we use this to overhaul the whole damn thing? Not just tweaks, but real changes that drag them into the 21st century, make them sweat like we do, and force decisions on merit, not on horse trading. I've got a handful of ideas floating around from various different sources that could flip the script. It's practical stuff, born from folks like you who've just simply had enough. First and foremost, term limits. Straight and simple. Cap House members at 4 terms. That's 8 years total, since their terms are every 2 years. And as for the Senate, 2 terms. 12 years max. Now, this is one I probably don't have to convince many people on. But for those who need to know why this should be done, it ends the lobbyist lifers who've turned the Hill into their personal Rolodex. You know the type, the ones who show up fresh-faced, promising to fight for the little guy, then spend decades golfing with donors while your roads crumble and your schools scrape by. Infuse new blood, whether they be teachers, farmers, small business owners who actually remember what a mortgage feels like. Polls show 80% of Americans back this, red and blue alike, because it's about fresh eyes, not incumbency. No more of this, I've been here since Reagan. Get in, serve honorably, and get out. Maybe even back to a real job where deadlines actually mean something. And tied right to that idea is the second one, their pay. Pay them what their constituents make. Tie congressional salaries to the median income in the state or district they represent. For a representative from California, that means around $80,000 a year. From Mississippi, closer to $45,000 a year. Boom. Suddenly, they're budgeting like you are, clipping coupons, thinking twice about that steak dinner on a taxpayer dime. It tunes them in real quick. No more ivory tower disconnect where they vote on healthcare hikes that they've never felt. And yeah, it'll weed out the grifters chasing the big check. If you're in it for the gold-plated pension, look elsewhere. This isn't meant to be punishment. It's alignment. Live like the folks you serve and watch how fast affordable housing jumps to the top of the agenda. Now, speaking of money that goes down the drain, and this one's another low-hanging fruit in today's day and age, kill the DC travel racket. With Zoom and Microsoft Teams and any number of other technologies out there, why are we shelling out millions yearly for private jets and hotel suites just to shuttle them back and forth to the Capitol? End mandatory in-person schlep. Let them vote remote. attend hearings from the district office, collaborate like the rest of us do post-pandemic. That travel budget, redirect it to fix potholes or school lunches. It's 21st century tech meeting 18th century rules. Wasteful as all get out, and it keeps them glued to the Beltway bubble instead of hearing your gripes over coffee back home. Imagine your senator dialing in from the local diner, not some marble hallway, and actually listening because they're not 3,000 miles away from their constituents. And as long as we're slashing the junkets, we should axe overseas travel for congresspersons as well. No more fact-finding romps to Paris or Tokyo on the taxpayer's nickel. We've got ambassadors, we've got the State Department, actual diplomats paid to handle foreign relations. What is a representative from Arkansas or Iowa adding to a trade talk in Beijing? Zilch for their constituents, but primo photo ops and a 5-star buffet. Save the millions, keep the focus domestic. If you want world affairs, run for Secretary of State, not the House. It's not isolationism, it's common sense. Let the pros jet and keep our representatives grounded where their real work is supposed to be. And finally, and this one is the real game changer for cleaning up the sausage making process. Single issue bills only. Every piece of legislation hitting the floor, one topic. Clear as crystal, voted up or down on its merits. No more omnibus monsters, thousands of pages of pork stuffed with writers nobody reads, where you swallow the bad in order to get the good. If you want farm aid, vote on farm aid. Highway funds, separate bill. It kills the log rolling. I'll back your bridge if you fund my earmark. And forces honesty. Bills pass or fail because they're solid, not because they're bundled like a bad cable package. We've seen the chaos. Shutdowns drag because CRs get loaded with unrelated crap. Strip it down, vote clean, and watch accountability skyrocket. Groups like the Heritage Foundation and even some Dem reformers are floating versions of this. It's got legs because who doesn't want laws judged straight up? Okay, so yeah, that's a blueprint, not a Band-Aid. Term limits to boot the old guard, medium pay to keep them real, Zoom for the win on travel, no junkets abroad, and single-issue votes to cut out the crap. This shutdown's a symptom, not the disease. But man, what a wake-up call. With H.R. 1973 moving and petitions exploding, the pressure is on. So let's channel it. Okay, so now for the main topic, our deep dive, as it were. I wanted to talk to folks out there, more specifically, anybody with conservative leanings who might be listening to the sound of my voice right now, and talk about some of the ways that things that President Trump and his administration are doing, how they're affecting you specifically. So let's kick off with something that hits close to home for just about everybody. Healthcare. You remember the fight over Obamacare back in Trump's first go-round? He promised to repeal it and replace it with something beautiful. But what we got was a whole lot of nothing. And millions left scrambling, especially in those rural spots where hospitals are already hanging by a thread. Fast forward to now, and that mega bill, the big reconciliation package the Republicans rammed through in July, is slashing federal subsidies for doctor visits and nursing home care. We're talking over $900 billion yanked from Medicaid alone, the biggest cut in its history. That's leaving 7.5 million folks without coverage. And guess where it stings the worst? Red states like Kentucky, West Virginia, and Texas, where Republicans hold the reins, but expansion under the Affordable Care Act kept clinics open. I heard a story recently about a gentleman from Appalachia, a retired mill worker who voted for Trump twice, who's staring down a $500 a month premium now because his local ER closed after funding dried up. In Project 2025, it's got block grants that could boot another 10 to 20 million off the rolls, turning safety nets into Swiss cheese. Polls are showing even Trump's base wants those subsidies back. 60% of Republicans in shutdown talks are saying, hey, don't touch my doctor bill. It's like promising a free lunch and then serving empty plates. If you're in a small town where the nearest specialist is an hour or 2 hours away, this is not abstract. It's your next checkup turning into a credit card nightmare. Speaking of money that doesn't stretch, let's talk about taxes. That 2017 reform was sold as a win for the little guy. Remember the bumper stickers? But it blew up the deficit by $2 trillion, while 83% of the goodies went to the top 1%, leaving working families with crumbs that are set to expire this year. Now, Trump's extending those cuts in the 2025 package, but it's more of the same. Permanent breaks for billionaires like Elon Musk, while truckers in Pennsylvania and factory hands in Michigan see zilch after the temporary bits vanish. By 2029, families under $50,000 a year may get a measly $300 back, if that, while state taxes climb to plug those gaps. Because don't think that money that's defunded from places like the Department of Education doesn't get passed on to the states, who have to get the money from somewhere. Project 2025 piles on by gutting IRS audits on the rich, so they can skate while you're nickel and dimed. It's not trickle down. It's a dry well. Think about it. That overtime pay you busted your hump for, taxed harder, while the boss laughs all the way to the bank. No wonder economists are calling it a raw deal for the red Heartland wallet. All right, so if taxes feel like a slow burn, let's turn up the heat on worker protections. From the jump in term one, Trump rolled back overtime rules for millions, meaning you worked extra hours without extra pay. Billions lost for blue-collar crews in MAGA strongholds. Unions weakened, so negotiations turn into takeaways. Now, his agenda lets bosses skim tips straight from the servers in those red state diners you love. And Project 2025 is firing civil servants to stuff the Labor Department with yes men, fast-tracking more rollbacks that ignore the factory towns that put him over the top. Picture a welder in Ohio, for instance, voted for the jobs president, quote unquote, but now his wage hasn't budged since 2016, while costs continue to climb. That's not protection. It's a green light for the corner office to squeeze harder. And eventually you knew I was going to get around to tariffs, right? So shifting gears to farm and factory floor, those tariffs, oh boy. Trump's trade wars were supposed to stick it to China, but they jacked up the cost for soy growers in Iowa and parts makers in Michigan, needing $16 billion in bailouts just to tread water. Round two's 2025 threats on imports are already biting. Tractor prices up 20%. Exports to China down 53% in the first half of this year. Farmers are calling it Farmageddon, with incomes shrinking as the debts pile up. Yet they're still waving the hats at the rallies. Trump's floating another $10 billion bailout, but that's a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. Manufacturers losing thousands of jobs from uncertainty right in red districts. It's America first on the slogans, last in line for the pain. Now, don't get too comfy because the safety net is fraying as well. That 2025 budget, straight out of Project 2025, slashes SNAP by nearly $300 billion and disability benefits across the board. In southern red states, where 60% of users are Trump voters, that translates directly to higher grocery bills and kids going hungry. 17 million at risk overall. His first term tries cut $220 billion from food stamps. Now it's law, spiking poverty in places like Appalachia. Job losses follow, thousands in healthcare and retail tied to those programs. It's not tough love. It's tough luck for those who need it the most. And you might as well breathe deep because the air is getting dirtier out your way too. In term 1, the Clean Power Plan scrap let pollution roll back in coal country like West Virginia, worsening asthma and cancers. Now, Project 2025's EPA gutting invites more fracking and mining, repealing soot limits and toxic rules, all while big oil toasts. Rural counties are seeing hospital bills climb from the fallout. But drill, baby, drill drowns out the coughs. Your kid's playground is not as safe as it used to be. And senior citizens, this one's for you. Social Security and Medicare commissions eyed at privatization in both his first term and second term. And 2025's reforms look to raise the retirement age to 69. Means test benefits to fund tax breaks. Retirees in Florida and Arizona, GOP havens, face shrinking checks despite all the no cuts vows. Project 2025 calls them runaway entitlements. But it's grandma's fixed income that we're talking about that's going to take the hit. Next up, kids. Education, Project 2025's voucher, push axes federal funding for public schools, starving rural red state systems where 90% of students go to public schools. Bigger classes, fewer books, charters cherry pick, leaving small towns behind. That's one of the things that never gets mentioned when they talk about school vouchers, is that just because you get a voucher to go to a private school doesn't mean the private school has to take you. It's choice, all right. It's the school's choice. As far as the families, it's choose between underfunded or shut down. And finally, immigration. Mass deportations are yanking 11 million workers from farms, inflating food and housing costs in Sunbelt red states like Texas. Agriculture's hurting already. Shortages mean higher prices, which translates into lost jobs for citizens as well. And a whole lot of tough talk translates into a whole lot of empty shelves. So yeah, that's the lay of the land. Trump's playbook talks populism, but what it delivers is actually plutocracy. And it's your world feeling the squeeze. Think about this the next time you're listening to a lot of raw language about things like crime and immigration and so on and so forth. It's meant to distract you from the idea that the policies and programs that are being put into place, have been put into place, and may be put into place by the current administration are going to hurt the very people who they claim they're helping. And, in most cases, hurt the people who actually voted him into office. And now for this episode's high note. And in keeping with the theme of this full episode, this has to do with the shutdown as well. And the headlines are grim. Parks chained shut, federal paychecks on ice for over 800,000 workers, essential folks like TSA agents and our troops clocking in without pay. It's the kind of mess that makes you want to yell at the TV, wondering why grown folks in suits can't just sit down and hash it out like the rest of us do in the real world. But here's the thing, and this is why I love ending on these high notes. Amid all the finger pointing and close signs, America's pulling out its best trick. People helping people. Not waiting for some DC miracle, just everyday heroes rolling up sleeves, crossing aisles, and turning frustration into fuel for each other. Let me tell you about a chain of kindness that's lighting up this dark week, starting from the airports to the trails and right into our vets' doorsteps. It's one big, beautiful reminder that when the government's on pause, our neighborhoods kick into gear. So picture this. It's Wednesday morning at Dulles Airport outside of D.C. First full day of this mess. Planes are still flying, thank God, but the air traffic controllers guiding them, they're essential. So they're there, eyes glued to the radars, voices steady over headsets, keeping thousands safe. But no paychecks means no buffer for the basics. Enter Maria Gonzalez, Army vet turned controller, single mom to 2 elementary school kids in Fairfax. She's been up since 4 a.m., juggling shifts and school drop-offs when her phone buzzes with a text from the AFL-CIO. Working People First grant approved. $500 wired now. It's a part of their emergency fund launched day one of the shutdown, already hitting 5,000 families with quick cash for rent or gas or, in Maria's case, a week's worth of school lunches so her boys don't go hungry while she pulls double shifts. AFL-CIO President Liz Schuler put it plain in a statement last week. Quote, "We're not waiting for D.C. Unions built this country and we'll hold it together." End quote. Maria, wiping away a tear in a quick video she shared on a local Facebook group, says, quote, "I thought I'd have to choose between gas to work or food for the kids. This is a lifeline. It makes me feel seen." End quote. And get this, that grant didn't just fill her fridge. It freed her up to say yes to a weekend family outing, something she'd scratched off the calendar when Yellowstone called her name on a whim. See, Maria's always been a hiker, therapy from her deployment days, and with the parks technically closed under the shutdown, she figured it'd be a bust. But nope. Turns out while the rangers are furloughed and the gates are locked nationwide, volunteers have swarmed like bees to honey, staffing entrances, picking up trash, even leading impromptu tours to keep these American treasures breathing. Over 2,000 strong already, per the National Parks Conservation Association. From retirees to college kids, red hats and blue tees side by side. Maria loads up the car Saturday, drives the family out to Shenandoah, closer to Yellowstone, but same wild heart, and finds the entrance buzzing. No federal badge in sight, just a crew of locals, folks like retired firefighter Tom Riley from Montana, a lifelong Republican who winters in Virginia these days, and his new trail buddy, Sarah Kim, a 28-year-old teacher from California, card-carrying Democrat who's on fall break. Tom's got a grizzled vet vibe. Sarah's the one with the laminated trail maps and bear spray jokes. They're not official, but they're there, waving cars through, chatting up visitors about the leaves turning gold. That's when Maria's youngest, little Eddie, wanders off the path, kid stuff, chasing a squirrel, and the family's in mild panic mode. Tom spots him first, whistles low like calling a dog, and scoops him up before he tumbles into a creek. Sarah's right there with the juice box from her pack, turning it to a teachable moment. See, even squirrels know how to stick to the trail. The whole group's laughing in minutes, swapping stories over a picnic Tom rustled up from his cooler, PB&Js for the kids, trail mix for the grown-ups. Maria hugs them both, tears prickling again. You two, worlds apart on the news, but out here, you're glue. Tom waves it off. None of that stuff matters a bit when a kid needs fighting. This shutdown's bunk, but the park, that's ours. Sarah nods. We're keeping it open for families like yours. Because why should politics steal a good day? By the end, they swapped numbers. Tom's promising Montana hiking trips. Sarah's got Maria's controller log for a future flight discount. It's small, but in that moment, with the Blue Ridge Mountains humming around them, the shutdown feels a million miles away. And that ripple, it doesn't stop at the trailhead. Maria gets home, still buzzing from the day, and logs into GoFundMe to donate $20, her pay it forward from the union grant, to the Vet Strong DC fund that's exploding online. Started by a mix of vet groups and neighbors just days into the shutdown, it's already at $50,000, zeroing in on folks hit hardest by VA claim delays. You know the drill. With federal offices dark, paperwork piles up, benefits stall, exactly the nightmare for vets like Maria, who's been chasing a disability update since her discharge. But this fund? It's pure grassroots. Donations from $5 DoorDash tips to corporate matches, all funneled to housing gaps, utility bills, even drive-through grocery drops. The next morning, Maria's doorbell rings. No fanfare, just a neighbor, Jim from down the block. Quiet guy she's waved to for years. He's left 2 bulging bags. Apples, milk, pasta, a note scribbled on a napkin. Heard about the shutdown from the news. We got you, no strings. Turns out Jim's a vet too. Purple Heart from Vietnam. And he'd seen Maria's park post on the community board. 1 bag of apples says it all, he texts her later when she thanked him. Neighbors don't shut down. That simple act snowballs. Maria posts a pic of the groceries with a shout out to the fund, tags the union and the park volunteers, and by evening, donations spike another $2,000. Vets from Texas to Oregon chime in with their own stories. A Marine in Virginia getting rent covered, a Navy widow in Florida able to get her medication, all because one controller's good day sparked a dozen more. So yes, that's the thread weaving through this week that you don't get to hear about on the news. A union grant keeping a mom afloat, volunteers turning closed gates into open arms across party lines, and a doorstep drop that reminds every vet they're not alone. It's not going to fix the Hills gridlock, at least not overnight, but it's proof positive. When the suits drop the ball, we need to pick it up and toss it right back with a smile. In the noise of the blame game and the budgets, these stories whisper louder. America's heart beats strongest in the quiet helps, the bipartisan high fives on the trail, the napkin notes that say, "We see you." So the next time the headlines howl, lean into this, share a story, drop $1, wave at a neighbor, because that's us. People helping people. Shut down or not. All right, folks, that brings this episode of Your Neighbor on the Left to a close. As always, I want to thank everyone who took the time to download and listen to the sound of my voice. And I would love to hear back from you. Your thoughts on all of this stuff, your opinions, your things you disagreed with, things you agreed with, whatever. You can reach out to the podcast by going to any of the social media platforms for the podcast. The links for all of those are on the Linktree page, and the address for the Linktree page is in the episode description. You can also use email. The email address is neighboroutleftpodcast gmail.com. So please reach out and tell me what you think. We'll be back on Friday with another installment of Back Porch Files. So until then, stay vigilant, stay kind, and as always, have the week you'd wish for others.